Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Hope you guys are having a good week. In today's video, we're going to cover some macro, a little bit of TA. Third segment of the video, I'm going to cover a DeFi vertical that I think is poised to do really well in the upcoming bull market. In fact, even in the bear market, the vertical that I'm going to be covering in today's video seems to be doing really well relative to other DeFi protocols. And lastly, we're going to cover a few GameFi projects. The focus is going to be on projects building on Solana. And that's because I've been having calls with somebody that's really deep into the Solana NFT space. On our last call, we talked about creating a spreadsheet. So if that ever materializes, I'll make sure to share it with you guys in a future video. If you guys are interested in NFTs on Solana, I've been working with a few buddies to create a Discord. It's up and running at the moment. And in that Discord, we share alpha on a routine basis. And occasionally projects will reach out to us, giving us free whitelist. And for the most part, we've been just giving those away to our community. So if you guys were interested in Solana NFTs, you guys are interested in getting some alpha and possibly some free whitelist, make sure to join our Discord Lighthouse DAO by clicking the link in the description below. Now with the intro out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into this video. All right, to get things kick-started, the first thing we're going to cover is macro. I'm just going to go over a few key events because ultimately I think what determines the bottom is going to be the macro. A lot of people on crypto Twitter are talking about how we've seen capitulation in the market. The biggest players have capitulated. And so for that reason, we've bought. I personally disagree. I think what you really have to watch for is the liquidity in the market. You can see here, as liquidity recedes or drops, price of Bitcoin started to fall. And the blue back here basically represents net Fed liquidity. If you guys wanted to use the indicator for yourself, it's this one here, Fed net liquidity indicator. And you can see that Bitcoin rose a little bit after we saw a huge injection of liquidity by the Fed. Back in November, when Powell said that inflation was getting a little hot, you can see on the chart that the liquidity provided by the Fed started to trend down. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Bitcoin's price followed soon afterward. So until we get reassurance that we're now going to see liquidity continue to be withdrawn from the market, I personally don't think it's a good idea to begin accumulating. So with that being said, on July 24th, the Fed raised the rate by 75 basis points. And many people tend to forget that originally they planned for 50, but they raised to 75 after they saw that the CPI print was trending up. After the rate hikes, and even though we got a bad CPI print in June, the market found a local bottom and rallied up. And this includes the S&P and the NASDAQ. And so analysts out there are crediting this to what Jay Powell said. In the last FOMC meeting, he said, "We are now at levels broadly in line with our estimates of neutral interest." Personally, I don't think it had much to do with what he said. I think the markets would have rallied regardless. I mean, if you look at the net liquidity, here you saw it going down and the market started selling off ahead of that. And I think you'll see the same thing happen. If let's say in a few weeks we see more liquidity removed, this entire move up is eventually going to be erased. Another factor driving the rally is the fact that it's widely accepted that CPI on August 10th is going to come back lower. And after that CPI comes back, we don't have another major event until the 13th of September. And the next FOMC meeting isn't until the 20th. But on the other hand, if for some reason the CPI print comes back higher or is about the same as it was in July, I think you'll probably see weakness in the market. Let's not forget the earnings for Q2 were better than expected. My guess is that a lot of these companies buffering their numbers by raising cash through asset liquidations. For example, we saw that Tesla sold a bunch of their Bitcoin at a loss. So if you combine all those factors together, it makes sense why the market rallied. My personal plan was to long the market after the FOMC meeting on the 26th and the 27th, but unfortunately the market started rallying weeks ahead of that. It was almost like traders were trying to front run a lower CPI print, and also the fact that we had this blackout period until the end of or mid-September. Moving along, the GDP in Q2 of 2022 was negative 0.9%. The Atlanta forecast was negative 1%. And the Atlanta forecast for the upcoming quarter, or the quarter that we're in right now, was recently revised from 2.1 to 1.3. The Fed in the past has revised their forecast multiple times. I mean, if we use the second quarter as an example, they forecasted that the GDP was going to be 1.9. On June 1st, it was revised down to 1.3. June 6th, it was 0.9. June 15th, 0. And finally, they revised it down to -1%. And you can see that the actual GDP was pretty close to the forecast. And historically speaking, the Atlanta forecasts tend to be pretty accurate. So recently, the Atlanta forecast for Q3 was revised down from 2.1 to 1.3. And so as more data comes in, my guess is that we're going to see further revisions to the downside. And if that's the case, you can expect that the Q3 earnings for a lot of these companies is going to be pretty bad. I mean, partly what's going to contribute to that is the fact that rents are still rising. Now, luckily, the rents aren't increasing as fast as 2021, but remember, these are year-over-year changes. So 6.7 is still a pretty large number. And I think part of the reason that rents continue to go up is the fact that houses are too expensive, rates are rising. So people that normally would have bought a house are probably waiting it out. So demand for renting houses has been on the increase. And the reason that's not great for the economy is because people will have less disposable income to spend on goods and services. And don't forget that CPI, about a third of it is housing. So it's going to be interesting to see what the CPI comes back on August 10th, because for this rally to continue, in my view, you don't want a CPI print that's in line with the previous months. You want something that's a bit lower to show that we're reversing the trend. And so as long as the macro picture continues to look grim, I think you're going to see the following trend continue. Take a look at the volume on exchanges. The volume has been trending down since 2021, and we haven't seen any sign of reversal as of late. I mean, even if you look at Google search volumes, you can see that the trend is clearly down. And even NFTs that showed relative strength heading into 2022, we've seen a lot of interest drop off for that too. Now, as long as Bitcoin continues to trade like a tech company that doesn't have cash flow, it's very likely that we continue to go down and hit new yearly lows. What I'm expecting is to see at least one more major leg down, which I'm going to try to short. I successfully shorted the majority of this move here, and I think we're getting ready for a potential move up to get everybody to chase in and change their biases, because you have plenty of people who change and flip biases depending on the latest candle. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get another big move up to trap longs, get people to thinking that we're going to make new highs, that we're headed into the next bull market. And whenever that move materializes, I think soon afterwards, we'll see a big leg down. And I'm not too sure if that correction or that large move down is going to take days or weeks. But whenever we get that next move down, I think we're probably going to see choppiness afterwards. And I wouldn't be surprised if after that leg down, we also enter the accumulation phase of the cycle. And if my forecast ends up being accurate, you guys also should probably start your own watch list. I call this the bear market watch list. Basically tokens that you think are going to do really well next cycle. Because some of the tokens out there, for example, I'm pretty optimistic about Pocket's future, and I'll cover more of that in a future video. But anyhow, if Pocket gets to 1 cent or less than 1 cent, it's one of those tokens where you just dump $5,000 to $10,000 in, and either it goes to zero, which I doubt, or let's say Pocket reclaims previous highs. If Poked claims previous highs of $3, a small investment of just $5,000 to $10,000 could turn into millions. And this is how most of your favorite tubers and crypto influencers made a killing last cycle, is either by getting in seed rounds early or investing and accumulating at the cycle lows. And personally, I have a bias for projects that came in late during this cycle. So basically projects that came out in Q4 of 2021 or Q1 of 2022. And I'm sure there's going to be more projects that continue to come out. For example, Aptos and Sui, and those tokens aren't going to be released until much later. So the way I look at it, if you agree with me and you think we're going to head to a new low, then you're probably best holding off and not dollar cost averaging at these prices. But if you're uncertain and you don't want to miss the big move up in the next bull market, and you think at the current prices, alts offer a very good risk to reward, go ahead and begin dollar cost averaging today. In fact, that's what people like Crypto Banter have started to do. I recently tweeted out his dollar cost average Excel sheet. You can reference that if you needed some insights into what alts other people are investing in. But if you begin dollar cost averaging today, just remember that we may go down 50 to 80% depending on which coin you end up allocating to. But ultimately, I think the good projects, the strong projects will re-emerge from the bear market. Obviously, they're going to go ahead and give you different returns, but unlike equities and the TradeFi market, you have the potential to make life-changing gains in the next 3 to 5 years. This section of the video, I want to cover a DeFi vertical that I think is poised to do really well in the coming years. If you follow my work and you follow me on Twitter, you know I've been talking about GMX for a while. And if my forecast is accurate and DeFi perpetuals take off, then you're going to see perpetual protocols across the board begin doing really well, especially their tokens, because people love bandwagoning on top of narratives. And I think this is a pretty powerful narrative for a few reasons. Number one, it's profitable in a bear market. In fact, some of the exchanges like BitTrue have recently added perpetuals. And my guess is it's a good way for them to supplement their revenue while exchange volume, spot volume is drying up. So if exchanges are getting most of their revenue from perpetuals, then it makes sense to me that the most profitable protocols are going to be perpetuals. We won't go into the nuances in this video. I'll most likely do that in future videos. In fact, I might do a video review for the protocols that I'm most bullish on. Based on what I know now, I'm most bullish on GMX, DYDX, and Gains Network. Another reason I'm bullish on DeFi perps is because the token value accrual models are much stronger. For example, let's take a look at the tokenomics for GMX. Users who stake their GMX get the following 3 rewards. They get escrow GMX, multiplier points, and 30% of the platform fees are distributed to staked GMX holders in ETH. And Gains is doing something comparable, but in their case, they're distributing DAI to token holders. In addition to this, you also have governance. In most cases, this utility is rarely exercised, but in the coming years, as we see more sophisticated players enter the market and we see more improvements in the DAO model, I think governance will become more and more important. Another reason I'm bullish on DeFi perps is because unlike a centralized exchange where you have to do KYC, in many cases for these DeFi protocols, you're not required to do any KYC or give custody of your funds. And speaking from personal experience, I've used GMX, and if you guys have it and you guys wanted to try it out, make sure to check out my referral link in the description below. A centralized exchange, which in most cases requires you to use USDT as collateral. With GMX, for example, I can use any of these assets as collateral. And because we're in the early innings, there are some major downsides to using these perp platforms, but I think long-term, you'll definitely see DeFi protocols get more and more of the market share as the user experience improves. Because just like after 2017 and 2018, when regulators came down on exchanges, I was using Binance for the longest time, and it wasn't until 2020 that they finally kicked me off the platform. And so I would imagine that the same thing is going to apply to perps. A lot of people are using Bybit, but inevitably the regulators are going to come down hard, and Bybit is going to be forced to be more strict about enforcing KYC. So when that happens, I think you're definitely going to see more and more people shift their trading activity to DeFi protocols. And lastly, perp trading is becoming more and more popular. In fact, it accounted for $57 trillion in volume in 2021, and it accounted for 53% of all trading volume. And if we compare decentralized perp exchange volume versus centralized perp volume, DeFi perps have grown from just 2% of the market share in September 2021 to 5.4% at the start of November 2021. And like I mentioned earlier, as the user experience improves, for example, we see mobile apps come out, we see DeFi protocols deployed on chains that allow for scalability. this number is likely to increase in the coming years. So for that reason, I think we're relatively early to this opportunity. And if it wasn't for the strong correlation that crypto has to the equities market, I think we probably would have seen a lot of these protocols already take off. I mean, if you take a look at GMX, it basically 4x'd from the local bottom in June, as it currently sits at $40. Overall, I think it's a really good opportunity, especially for retail investors, because when these exchanges launch like FTX, Binance, in order for you to get equity in the company, you had to be an accredited investor. There were too many barriers for us to access investment opportunities into these exchanges. But when it comes to these DeFi protocols, anybody can use one of these DEXs to get exposure to these tokens. And by staking the tokens, you're basically going to get dividends. And I'm confident that we're going to see more protocols launch. And if you wanted to keep up to date with them, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell. This last segment of the video, we're going to cover a few GameFi projects building on Solana. I think in the next bull market, I think there's a potential for a few of these projects to give crazy good returns. I'm talking about turning $30, $50, $100 into over $10,000, maybe even $50,000. I mean, when I first invested in Solana NFTs, I was fortunate enough to mint Solana Monkey Business. At that time, I probably spent 30 to 50 bucks. And at the peak, the floor price was $50,000. Fortunate enough to mint one of the rares, there's a chance that you turn $50 to $100 into over $500,000, $1 million. So I'm really looking forward to investing in a few of these GameFi projects in the bear market because number one, the prices are going to be a lot lower. The froth is going to be gone. Presumably only the quality teams are going to survive and endure, which increases your odds of landing an investment that gives you a really good return. Now, with that being said, there's a lot of projects out there, so you want to get organized. Personally, I'm not buying a lot right now. I'm basically watching the market, bookmarking all of the NFT projects that I've researched that I'm interested in buying potentially in the future. And so I'm using the following two apps. Using NFT Folio, which is an application available both on Android and the iPhone. And this app is pretty good because it includes both ETH and Solana-based NFT projects, but the downside is that the list for the Solana-based project isn't comprehensive. But nonetheless, it's a good way to keep track of a lot of the popular NFT projects out there. But if you want a more comprehensive list, I would recommend using the Magic Eden app because it includes all the Solana NFT projects that are listed on the marketplaces. And given that Magic Eden has the highest market share, it's very likely that you'll be able to add the project of your interest on the watch list. And that brings me to the first project that we're going to cover, Tatsumiko. This project ended up getting a pretty large investment from quality investors. You have Defiance Capital, you have Binance Lab, you have Soul Big Brain Holdings. And the reason this is important is because in a bear market, you want to make sure that your team is well capitalized so you can pay developers and other people to continue building and iterating on the project. So to me, this is a very healthy sign. Now, this doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to deliver, but it does mean that they're going to continue building throughout the bear market, which increases the odds of them delivering on their roadmap. And another reason I really like this project is the fact that they give regular updates. This way, investors and community members are kept up to date with their developments. And the team behind the project, they've been at the forefront of growing the world's biggest virtual communities on Discord with their platform Tatsu. And currently there's over 1.4 million Discord servers that use Tatsu to manage and engage with their community. And they're currently working on transforming this platform to a massive multiplayer online role-playing game. The game is going to use NFTs, which can authenticate unique digital items to enable a new business model. The team is global and they have veterans from Square, Gumi, Koi, with more than 40 members in 12 countries. And the benefit of buying an NFT today is the fact that you can stake it and earn IGS, which is the ecosystem's native token. So the main reason I'm watching the project, looking to potentially get exposure in the future, is because they have a team that's created a successful product in the past. And basically what they're looking to do is use the funds that they raised in the seed round to iterate on that product and make it even better. And usually when people have a track record of being successful, their odds of delivering on new initiative or goals is much higher. Another project that I'm watching is Guild Saga. It's a play-to-earn NFT-based 2D fantasy RPG. And this team was already working on this project before they launched their NFT collection on Solana. And recently they launched their alpha testing and had over 400 applications. In fact, I submitted an application myself. And I really like the fact that unlike most of the projects out there, they were already working on this before they launched the NFTs. And since launching their NFTs, they haven't lost any momentum. They continue to iterate on their project. And on top of that, despite being in a bear market, their community is pretty engaged. You already see guilds forming. In fact, I'm in a guild myself. And they have these YouTube videos that they recently started. They're doing AMAs and also giving samples of what they've produced so far. And to me, it's a good sign that they're continuing to build despite being a bear market. They haven't lost any of their momentum. They're keeping the community engaged, and they're also rewarding loyal community members who have NFTs by allowing them to stake those NFTs for in-game items and their ecosystem token. And this is pretty unique in terms of engaging the community. They allowed the community to submit designs, and they started this weekly series where they highlight designs by the community members that made it into the game. So it's pretty cool that in Web3, gamers and investors can witness the game being built in real time and also influence the final product that ends up being released. Next up, we have Catch King. This is an MMO that was started by a couple people, and this is another game that was started before the mint. And they haven't focused much on the play to earn aspect. They're mainly focused on making the game fun. And if you head over to Discord, you can see that on a regular basis, they're sharing their updates with the community. And on top of this, they also are participating in spaces on a regular basis. So if you wanted to hear from one of the team members, you can join in on the spaces and get real-time updates. And recently they decided to release a PFP NFT. I'm not sure if this is going to be airdropped or if they're going to have a mint. That's because they realize that most people aren't interested in GameFi NFTs just yet. They're strictly focused on PFP projects. And like I mentioned earlier, their focus is going to be making the game fun. It's basically going to be a collectathon game. And to access the game, you're going to need your Catch King Explorer NFT. And the native token for the ecosystem is Catchcoin, which, by the way, you can earn by staking your Catch King NFT. The gameplay is going to revolve around completing your collection, filling out your museum, displaying your collectibles acquired through the dungeon runs to gain status among other players. Their aim is to appeal to a wide variety of gamers and push the genre further than ever before by utilizing the wonders of blockchain. And what's unique about this game is that they're trying to create a social hub, so players will be able to mingle, chat, craft items, show off rares, and compare their progress and collection logs. And to give you a sense of their trajectory, the team was inspired by the socially immersive experiences and rich economic systems they experienced growing up, most notably in RuneScape, MapleStory, and the World of Warcraft. And other games that inspired them were Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, Enter the Dungeon, and Legend of Zelda. One thing I do worry about is the fact that they have a small team and they're working with the funds that they raised during the NFT sale that they had. So I'm not sure how much money that they have left to continue building the game. And eventually they're going to run into a lot of competition, I would imagine. So I personally only have a little bit of exposure, but it's one of those projects that you want to keep watching, because if they keep building, I think they can actually pull off something really special here. The next game I'm going to cover is Remnant. This is a gamified idle game built on Solana where users can loot, trade, upgrade, and earn. And this was actually relatively a very successful project early on. The thing that really stood out to me was how responsive the devs were and how fast they were able to deliver in updates. And despite having that early success, they haven't lost any momentum. They continue to build. This was one of the few GameFi projects that did relatively well after their mint. And that's because they delivered pretty fast on their roadmap. And also, people were actually making money by playing the game. And so we saw the floor price go from 2 SOL all the way to 20 SOL. In fact, some of the NFTs were selling for 50 plus SOL. But since then, you can see that most people have started to unload their remnants. Plus they came out with the feminines, which diluted the collection, causing the floor price to further decline. But I think overall, they're just a victim of the bear market like any other quality project out there. I'm personally going to be watching them. I have a remnant and I have a few camps. And I think as long as they keep building and they keep iterating in the project, they have a good chance. But just like Catch Kings, I didn't see a raise. So I'm worried and concerned that they might not have enough capital to endure through the bear market. So I'm personally not buying any more at the moment. I'm just going to continue to watch the market because there's a good chance that Sol may trade below its current value. And if that happens, you're going to get a really good opportunity to buy some of these GameFi projects at a significantly discounted price. All right, folks, that pretty much wraps up the video. If you've been watching the video until this point, I do plan to create spreadsheets of DeFi projects, of GameFi projects. I have a few other things lined up, and a lot of this information is shared in my private Discord with my community members. And I got some really good quality people in there. In fact, I probably would have never invested in NFTs if it wasn't for my private group. I mean, there's only so much information and content that one person can consume. So it's nice being part of a private community that shares alpha with one another. And it's also a great opportunity for you to network ahead of the next cycle because you're basically in a forum with like-minded individuals who have similar interests. And so by joining my private Discord channel, by signing up through my Patreon, which is linked in the description below, you can get a head start on the next bull market by getting quality alpha and also expanding your network. With that being said, this is CryptoOneStop signing out. I'll talk to you folks next time. Bye.